Hey there, it's Mr. Stu. In today's lesson, we're going to learn all about self-care. What does it mean? What are some ways that we can do it? And why is it so important? We'll also learn that the way that you take care of yourself is likely the way that you're taking care of your children. And the way that you view yourself will be the way that your child will view themselves one day. Stay tuned after the video for a self-care activity for you and your child, and one that's just for you. Let's check it out. Let's talk about taking care of yourself, nurturing yourself. That term that is so used today, self-care, looking at yourself in the mirror, being okay with what you see and taking care of the things that you want to change. Not looking at yourself in the mirror and having these inappropriate expectations that you should be perfect or that you're some worthless human. Not having those types of expectations, but having appropriate expectations for both yourself as a person and as a parent, because they are not the same. Just because you are a parent doesn't mean that's all you are. Do you have appropriate expectations for what that looks like? And then consistency, not someone who is constantly picking ourselves apart with these inappropriate expectations and ending up with anxious attachment to ourselves, and not someone who is avoiding altogether looking at ourselves, but someone who is consistent, that we take the time to look at ourselves in the mirror, appreciate the things that are to be appreciated, and willing to work on the things that we want to change. There's 4 main reasons that I hear why people don't participate in self-care. The first is one that I hear most from these anxious, avoidant, and uninvolved parents, and it's, I don't deserve it. These are the parents that believe that when they look in the mirror, they are some worthless human being that has way too much to fix, or they believe that they deserve the position that they're in. So no, I'm not going to take time to look at myself, because when I do look at myself, I don't like what I see. That's part of that appropriate expectations, and I'm just never going to do it. Because if I took the time to really look at myself in the mirror, I know there would just be too much. I don't deserve self-care. I'm a terrible, uninvolved parent that's landed my child in anxious and avoidant attachment territory. So no, I'm not going to participate in self-care. I don't deserve it. Here's what happens to those people. Those people end up being people that participate in self-harming activities. That could be cutting, burning. It could be over-drinking. It could be the usage of drugs in a way that is harmful. Self-harm happens a lot in this territory when we have inappropriate expectations for ourselves and we have a low consistency of taking the time to observe ourselves and look at the things and appreciate the things that we love and be willing to change the things that need changing. What does this do to our children? When our children see us harm ourselves, then our children decide that it's okay for them to harm themselves as well. So if a child knows that their parent is cutting, or if a child knows that their parent is drinking too much, if a child knows that their parent is using drugs in a way that is harmful, then that child grows up believing that when you look at yourself, you should not be happy with what you see, and that you don't deserve anything other than pain. Because the way that you treat yourself is the way that you will treat your children, and the way that you view yourself is the way that your child will view themselves one day. Are you a parent that says, I don't deserve it? Because if you are saying, I don't deserve self-care, you are looking at your child, and when your child sees that, your child is saying, I must not deserve to take care of myself either. Are you willing to change, maybe not for yourself, but for your child? Are you willing to get a little bit more appropriate with your expectations and a little bit more consistent on your self-care so that your child doesn't end up in this territory? The second thing that I hear all the time, this especially comes from men, is that self-care stuff is just dumb. That we need to just suck it up. Where does this come from? This comes from a consistent looking at ourselves with low expectations of ourselves, or inappropriate expectations, that's the better term, inappropriate expectations for ourselves. We say that self-care stuff, that's dumb, you need to just suck it up. I'm consistently going to look at myself and I'm consistently going to tell myself I am not good enough. There is nothing I could ever do that could be good enough. I'm going to constantly be pushing myself, constantly be driving myself. And in theory, that sounds great, doesn't it? But if you end up in this territory, what happens is your child sees you as the parent looking at yourself and saying, I'm never going to be good enough, and constantly trying to achieve perfection, but never reaching it, never being satisfied. And our child is going to say, that must be what life is. Because the way you look at yourself is the way that your child will view themselves one day. So if you are setting it up to say that's dumb, you need to just suck it up, deal with it, life's not fair. If you are the person that says self-care is not worth it, then you are setting up your child to be in anxious attachment territory, and you're setting them up later in life to say, life will never be good, we'll always just be striving to make it better. Is that the message you want to be sending to your child? If it is, stay right there. If that's not the message that you want to send, then we've got to get more appropriate with our expectations of ourselves, and we've got to be more consistent in our willingness to look at ourselves, appreciate the things that we love, and change the things that need changing. The next reason that I hear that people don't participate in self-care is there's no time. By the time I take the kids to soccer practice, dance recital, choir, church, and their friend's house, and then I've picked up all their friends and dropped off all their friends, there's just no time for self-care. These are the parents that do maybe have some appropriate expectations for themselves as a parent, but they never look at themselves, or they rarely look at themselves as a parent because they're afraid they're not going to be meeting those expectations. We talked about how the parents that end up in the permissive territory and send their children to avoidant territory are typically their child's best friend. And so if all day long your child has been telling you how great of a parent you are, but you have this standard of parenting that you know is much more appropriate, then you are much less likely to look at yourself and say, maybe there are some things that need to change. Maybe there are some standards that I'm not holding myself to. And so we just say there's no time. Because if I really was consistent, if I really looked at myself as a parent, maybe I wouldn't be my child's best friend. Maybe I would hold myself to a standard that is higher than that of a teenager. And so we just say there's no time. Because rather than looking at ourselves and seeing the things that we should appreciate and being willing to change the things that we know need changing, it's a whole lot easier to just say there's no time for that. But here's what that does to children. What that does to children is it sets them up to say, when you grow up, you need to just stay busy. Stay busy, 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 because the moment you stop and look at yourself, you're going to hate yourself. So these are the children that start to look around, and the only relationships they have are like roller coasters. They are always doing something. They're always busy. These are the children who believe that busyness equals love, that a relationship is not real unless there is so much busyness happening in it. They're the ones that leave, that divorce, because the marriage just got uninteresting. It's not busy enough. And so if you're saying there's no time for yourself as self-care, just understand the message that you are sending to your children, because the way that you look at yourself will be the way that your child looks at themselves one day. Those are three of the reasons that I hear why people don't participate in self-care, but there is a fourth, and this one I actually hear from securely attached parents. They say that self-care costs too much money. That there's no way that we could participate in self-care because I can't afford the cruise, I can't afford the spa trip, I can't afford a weekend away. What do you mean self-care? I can't afford going to those classes, I can't afford doing those things. We say that self-care costs too much money. I'm going to show you some ways to get around that. First, I want to talk just a moment real quick about anxious, avoidant, and anxious. Because in this territory, this is where it is likely that your child will end up in self-harming territory. Why? Because they will believe that they don't deserve to be happy, that they don't deserve to be cared for, their needs don't deserve to be met, or that they're dumb for having needs. And when you feel that way, you don't want to go ask someone for help. You want to try to take care of it all on your own. And there are some things that just that aren't easy to take care of all on your own. This is where we end up in self-harm. So I wanted to share with you something that my friend posted just the other day. Because self-harm is inflicting physical pain on yourself, but these are also some versions of self-harm. Continuing to check someone's social media only to compare yourself and find that you are not at the same level. Friendships rooted in gossip and backstabbing. The oversharing of intimate, private information with people who do not deserve to hear intimate, private information. That's a form of self-harm. Denying or restricting the basic necessity of food. I'm not saying that you just allow yourself to eat whatever you want, whenever you want, but do you restrict food to a point that it's self-harm? Focusing your energy on trying to manipulate and change someone into who you believe they should be, including trying to manipulate your child into changing and becoming who you believe they should be. It's a form of self-harm. Allowing abusive family members, friends, or other relationships access into your life. Perfection or setting impossible expectations. Secret affairs. Lying. Remaining in places that cause you to do things that you vowed to give up long ago. Insistently looking for flaws every time you look in the mirror. Not saying no when you know you should. Is your child watching you self-harm? If so, it's much more likely that they're here to end up in this territory. How do we move over here? We start participating in the act of looking at ourselves in the mirror. Maybe not literally, maybe more metaphorically, but we examine ourselves. We see the things that we love and we appreciate those things. And those things that need changing, we look at them and we come up with a plan to change them, not blaming ourselves, not trying to make ourselves feel terrible, but we come up with a plan that we know we're going to conquer that thing. Here's some free ways that you can have self-care. I was looking, if you'll do a Google search just about self-care ideas, there are tons of posters and lists all over the internet that will tell you hundreds of thousands of ways that you can take care of yourself by spending little to no money. Here's some of my favorites. Drink a full glass of water. When was the last time you did that? Read a book by yourself. Buy yourself a cup of coffee. Let yourself purchase one thing at the grocery store that you've wanted for a long time. Maybe we need to even look at some more free type things. Go on a walk in nature. Hang out with a pet. Give someone you love a hug. Make a phone call to someone that you really miss. Write a handwritten note to someone who deserves it. Write a handwritten note to yourself. Journal 10 things that you're thankful for. Journal one thing that you're thankful for. All of those are free ways to have self-care. And if we will use those ways, then too much money is no longer an excuse. We can have appropriate expectations for ourselves as parents. We can know that it's okay to not be perfect, that anything that has been done to a child in our life, if we will work on being more appropriate and more consistent, we can undo any harm that maybe we've done. It's okay to not be perfect. We're not going to be perfect. Do we have appropriate expectations for ourselves? And are we consistent as we evaluate, as we look in the mirror and appreciate the things that we love about ourselves? And we come up with plans to change the things that need changing. Because remember, the way that you treat yourself, your child is watching. And the way that you look at yourself is the way that your child will look at themselves one day. Do you want them to believe that they don't deserve self-care? Do you want them to believe that self-care is dumb and that they need to just suck it up? Do you want them to believe that taking time for yourself is not a worthy endeavor? Or do you want them to know that it is a good thing to have appropriate expectations for yourself and consistently looking at yourself and seeing how you're matching up to those expectations, appreciating the things that are to be appreciated and changing the things that need changing? If you'll do that, you can take care of yourself. The way that you view yourself will change. The way that you view your child will change. And now and later on, the way that your child sees themselves can change. In today's video, we learned why it's so important for you to take care of yourself. One thing that you can do with your child is to talk about self-care and let them pick a way that they want to take care of themselves each day. Even if it's just for 10 minutes, allow your child to have some time for their self-care as well. Now for you, if you Google self-care, there will be thousands of things that come up. My challenge to you is to pick one of those ways and allow yourself some time to take care of you. If you'll do that, then you'll start to view yourself differently. It will help you view your child differently, and it will help your child in the future view themselves in a more positive way. I hope this lesson was really helpful for you and your child. Until next time, spread the word and share the love.